Hello and welcome to New Filmmakers Los Angeles in partnership with Movie Maker magazine. My name is Danny DeLillo. We're here at the South Park Center. I'm delighted to be joined with Kayla with her movie, Cleveland East Pender. Let's take a look at the clip.
哎呀，太厉害了！
袖子往高了点点。你融到这个社会以后，你有个归属感啊！你退休了以后，你可以参加跳舞，可以唱歌，可以走路去。人家不是说人老了老伴儿越多越好，那个老伴儿的意思是广义的老伴儿，就是说你有跳舞有跳舞的舞伴儿，唱歌有唱歌的伴儿，走路有走路的伴儿，是指的这个伴儿。说一个人起码要有6个伴儿，你的生活才不至于那么枯燥贫乏，所以我觉得挺有道理的。
这刺猬没弄好，
这个刺猬没弄好，我妈。
天太软，
天太软，
面太软。
对，这面怎么又变成天了？
Kayla, thank you so much for bringing your documentary to us. Welcome to the New Filmmakers LA family.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it was so good. It was so lovely to see your film up there on the big screen with an amazing array of a great program and filmmakers. For those that haven't seen your documentary, tell us a brief synopsis.
Yeah, so it is a sensory ethnography, sensory ethnographic documentary about the diversity in Vancouver, Canada, especially within the Chinese immigrant community.
It was such a wonderful film to watch, especially on the big screen as well. I think it really just encapsulated your vision. Just was like so much better than my laptop. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, yeah.
But you know, this film, I felt like I was there. I was in there. I was present with it. Where did the inspiration come for you in the decision making and the sort of story where like I want to turn this story into a film. I want to put it out there.
Yeah, so I was born in Vancouver. I spent my childhood and my teenage years in Beijing, China, and came to the States for college. I went to USC for film, and then this film was part of my master's program in visual anthropology. It was part of my thesis. And during COVID, I actually lived with my family back home in Vancouver, and that was kind of the longest time I've spent in Vancouver. And I started to realize that there are some very interesting differences. Yes, it's a big city. Yes, you have a huge Chinese immigrant community, but there are still little things here and there that make the Chinese immigrant community in Vancouver so special.
Yeah.
One of the things that I thought was really interesting, and someone brought it up, was the conveyor belt scene.
Yes.
At the grocery store.
Yes.
And you see all the food, you see all the products. We know about globalization, this market that is so international. But when you see let's say a rice ball that has the Chinese name, the Chinese company, and then you have the English name, and then you also have the French name on the packaging. There's something really fun and special about that. And when I went home, I really enjoyed the city. I took in all the natural kind of inspirations. Vancouver is situated between like a sea and a Stanley Park, if you know. It's like beautiful forest. I was able to talk to our family friends, people I know who are coming in as first gen, people they're like 90 years old and this is their first time in Canada. And it was very special to me. And I wanted to take this opportunity to make a film about that community. So I tried to have some sit-down interviews, but also focus on what you see and the space and what that space looks like in the city. So that's how it started.
I mean, it's amazing because it's such a different experience than having actors, obviously, but when you've got people that may have spent their whole life not necessarily being on camera or on film, and then all of a sudden you come and say, hey, join part of my film. How was that for you as a director, and what kind of process was it for you working with your the subjects of your film?
Yeah, so I thought a lot about methodology, and I thought a lot about the ethics, and especially when they're just normal folks, they don't ever want to be actors. They're not really, I don't even know if they watch a lot of movies. They're
Yeah.
not they're just normal folks.
Yeah.
So when I approached them with this idea, they're like, "What do you think my life is interesting? Like, what part of my life is interesting?"
Yes, so
like,
interested.
Right. Like, I'm not a movie star. Like, I don't have a crazy crime story for you to follow. Like, this is not, my life is not that interesting. I run a lottery stand, you know, it's not that cool. But, you know, I spent a lot of time with them before I started bringing my camera in. And that was very intentional. That's something that I planned for. So I made sure that I was there to spend time with their family, to eat, to go to the park together, to chat beforehand. And it took me a few weeks until I actually brought in the camera to say, okay, let's sit down and chat. And this time you will be on camera. And I also made sure that I left time in post-production for them to look over the footage, how they were edited and how they were, you know, I wanted to make sure that they're comfortable with how they looked, what they sounded like, and how they were presented on screen. So it's different from working with actors. I just wanted to be very careful and very intentional with how I approach this filmmaking process.
Yeah, I think you did a fantastic job. But I mean, goodness me, their lives were so interesting. I was like, I didn't want it to end. I was like in it with them. You know, it's so. I think one of the things that I really loved that you show was obviously special to show the Chinese community within Canada and within Vancouver particularly as well, but also just the multi-generational, you know, how things differ from, you know, a younger, you know, second, third generation to, you know, to someone that's like, you know, been there for a long time and been there a short time, and the difference of what that looks like. You really captured those dynamics really well, sort of for these multi-generations or experiences living in a different place other than the country they were from. Was that something you wanted to sort of really engross? Because I think it was really interesting seeing the differences between everyone and their experiences.
Yeah, I had a few big questions that I wanted to ask, but I wasn't there to try to get a story out of them.
Yeah.
So it was just a chat. And it wasn't until I went to the editing room and put it together, it was then I realized that they have very similar experiences, but so different depending on their age, how long they've been in Canada, what they're doing in Canada. The grandma, she is 90 something.
She's so sweet.
She's so sweet. She's in her mid 90s, and she, you know, a huge part of her experience in Vancouver is the loneliness that she felt.
Yeah.
You know, back home she was dancing, she was going to parks and doing social dances with the fellas, and she was singing, she was part of a choir, and all of a sudden she's here and she's trapped in a house. So yeah, you have like the good nature, the good, you know, the good food, good prices, but the experience is very different from her daughters, who she said that she's out hiking, she's out singing, she's in all these social groups. And it wasn't until I put it together in the editing room, so then I realized that, you know, they're living like contrasting lives, even though they're under the same roof.
Yeah, that was really striking about, you know, it's horrible to find anyone that's lonely, but I think when you put it with a layer on of just like feeling lonely older, and then also feeling like that, you know, it's not quite like everything that you've been used to when you were growing up and experiencing, and just the extra trials and tribulations that you have living in a place that's not as familiar to everything that's part of you, and integrates that. It's a lot, you know, and I think you captured those two stories so well. Obviously, you know, I can't quite believe it, because I'm like you, it's one of your thesis, right, this film, which is, I mean, amazing for making this as your thesis film. How was that experience? Like, thesis is kind of insane, it's crazy, but then especially a story with, like, you know, many people a lot older than you, and how was that experience for you?
Yeah, so I shot a few short films beforehand, and I had wonderful crews, very small too, but for this is different because I talked to, you know, I was the director, I shot it myself, and I put it together myself. And that can be a lonely process.
Yes.
And feeling like you don't have, you know, anybody to turn to on set. You're there, you gotta trust your own gut instincts and your feelings, and make sure that, you know, you gotta trust the process.
Yeah.
You know, it being the thesis, I am so thankful for my faculty advisors. They're so, they had a lot of faith in me. And I took a lot of of that and turn it into courage, and just to go there, be in the field on my own, trying to talk to the folks, trying to like follow them around, but and really work through that awkward phase and that awkward barrier. And then putting it together, it was a long process. I wanted to make sure that they're happy, so I sent the files back and forth. I was able to talk to a few of my friends. You know, we watched cuts together. They've seen every single cut, gave notes. But overall, it was quite lonely.
Yeah. Oh goodness. Well, you did such a great job with it. Goodness me. I'm sorry it was so lonely for you though. But it's so special that you included all of us in your film. Looking back on it and just kind of the experience that you had, what's one thing that you've learned from this experience? If there's anyone else making their thesis film or their first kind of documentary, like any advice that you have on that?
Yeah. So many. I mean, first, I tell myself this, I think bigger doesn't mean better. Having a huge crew, huge budget, that's wonderful. But if this is your project that you have to make and you're the only person who can make it, spend time with the space that you have and just go in with full of courage and trusting your own instincts. And also don't be scared to ask for help. Really rely on the people you trust, and it's very much a collaborative process, I would say, and trust in that process.
I think it was, again, I think one of the things that I really appreciate about your documentary that you put together from a perspective that's closer to you is that, moving from one country, living in another country, studying in another country, it's a lot, right? And it's sort of, it's a lot of experiences that maybe a person who's from there doesn't understand, and hasn't experienced, like the extra levels of understanding that you've got to learn living in a new space, right? And, for you, obviously, you're born in Vancouver, grew up in Beijing, and then studying in the United States, like all of that dynamics. And I think you capsulated just like that experience from the Chinese perspective or Chinese Canadian perspective really, really well. Taking all of that in, what did you want your audience to sort of elude from those conversations?
Yeah, so it being a sensory ethnographic piece, I wanted to create these spaces where you can sit and kind of look at all the details to really take in the environment and to feel like you're on the street at the parade and you're there talking to the student, the youngest collaborator who is trying to pass her English classes, trying to, go to a community college. I wanted to give them that space and that time for the audience members to just really look and enjoy. And that includes the bridge that was there. It includes the grocery store, and all of the spaces that I featured. And I want them to just listen and to just be there and to look at what's on screen, what's in front of them. The main goal is to challenge that empathy and that compassion. When you like the grandma who would just sit outside and count buses all day, to when you see someone, you see an elderly person next time, just really have that compassion, that empathy, and to kind of maybe remember that one moment in the film, and maybe do something different.
Yeah, I know. I can't stop thinking about her counting those buses. I'm like, she's so sweet. My goodness. What is next for you, Kayla?
I have a short film that I'm set to direct later this year. It's a narrative film. Super excited. I'm using that as a proof of concept for my feature that I wrote. So hopefully all things fall into place and I can bring my work back to new filmmakers.
Please, oh my goodness. I mean, honestly, your work and your vision is fantastic in this film, and I can't wait to see that your next projects. But well done for giving us a slice of life, because I think it's so great when you can make a documentary and we won't forget it because we remember all the details that you put in there and the people that you shone a light on, and they may not think they're actors, but they were stars to us. Okay, so yeah. Well, listen, thank you, Kay, for being here. Welcome to New Filmmakers LA, and thank you very much for your film.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kay, everybody.